Welcome to Burnt Out. The Burnt Out podcast shares the stories of firefighters, emergency personnel, and other first responders around the world to create a pathway to save lives. The stories you will hear are real and may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. And now I'd like to introduce you to your hosts for Burnt Out, Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy.
Sean, thank you for that introduction. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Burnt Out podcast. And we got our co-host with me, and that's just Jeff, the Old Guy. Jeff, how you doing today?
Outstanding, Skip. Thank you. And why I've got everybody's attention, I'd like to remind them to go to our www.burntoutpodcast.org and a worldwide peer support to take care of our sponsor. See our sponsor taking care of this episode today.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. We appreciate our sponsors and the anonymous donations that we get to support this cause. And we got a special guest here all the way from Maryland. His name is Bam. And Bam, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here, and we'll ask you some questions. And we're not real professional. We just want to sit here like a kitchen table talk around. And so any questions you want to answer, we appreciate it. Any questions you don't want to answer, that's okay too.
Yeah, Bam, he said that you're like all the way out in Maryland, like there's something wrong with that. Well, there's two of us in Maryland against him in Indiana. So he's not going to handle me like that today. No. We're on East Side right now. He's Midwest. We got him. Just want to set that down, Skip. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, Bam, I tell you what, we appreciate you coming on the show. Our good friend Raj introduced us. You know, he's a part of my life and like a spiritual leader to me. You know, he keeps me on track too. So, Bam, could you give us a little, just a little rundown about your life, about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll go into some questions.
Martial arts is my way of life. It's the thing that allowed me to become the person I am today. I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. Growing up in the city of Baltimore, that's where I was born and raised. And through coming up, using martial arts, trying to use it as a way to express myself. Within my home environment, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of violence, sexually molested. I always like to say anything that can happen to a young man growing up in the inner city of Baltimore happened to me. But thank God I had martial arts, and martial arts was the thing that really allowed me to always try to come back to find myself. And after my mom passed away from cancer in my arm, I went on I guess I call it a suicide mission. I wanted to die. Because leading up to that, everything that I did, from hustling and selling drugs in the city, I was doing it to get my mom off of welfare, because I seen what she was going through. Like any kid back then, when you were growing up, when you were raised to become a young man at some point in time, it's kind of hard to see your mom and your dad and everybody struggling. You know, in their eyesight, we weren't poor, we were okay, but I still seen how my mom act when the bill collectors and people came around, and she was handicapped. So doing that also, her generation, when if you was handicapped, they hid you. They didn't really want to talk about you. They felt embarrassed. So I seen all those things happening. And when I got old enough to try to get the confidence and the strength, I went out and I started becoming a hustler. And anything that I could do to make it to the top of the scale, the tolling pole in the city of Baltimore, I did. And thank God once again for martial arts, because whenever people got locked up or got killed or bad things happened, I was always at a karate tournament. And it just went on the last run when my mom finally passed away in my arms. Like I said, she was my everything. She was my God. She was all the things that my wife and my family benefit from today. That's really what my mom's supposed to have been getting. So, you know, after going through that journey, being homeless and anything that can happen to you. I mean, we know the story as a recovering alcoholic. Anything that can happen to you, eating out of trash cans, living in shelters, all that stuff. It happened to me. But the greatest thing that happened to me was to be incarcerated. Got locked up in the maximum security prison, the Tucson Institute, 1989. When I got locked up, they did a strip search. When they strip searched me, they didn't find the drugs. So when I got my cell, I was claustrophobic. I thought about the drugs that I had in my hand, And I looked at the bunk and I seen a white sheet that I thought about hanging myself with. At that moment in time, I dropped down on my hands and knees and I prayed to God and I said, God, if you give me another chance to go out and help the next generation and make sure they never have to go through what I went through and use martial arts as my tool, I will never abandon you. And when I came from that prayer and that meditation and that writing, something said, stronger than drugs, stronger than drugs, stronger than drugs. And my mission was to create a foundation called Stronger Than Drugs and go out and show kids how to be stronger than drugs and not have to go to jail or have to come up the steps of AA and say I'm a recovering alcoholic. I wanted to bring my bottom to them, and that was like, 35 years ago? So the only people I sponsor are the kids that come through my dojo. That's it. I'm about the next generation. And today the program just was approved as a 501c3, and it's called the Urban Spirit. We're on a mission to give away 1 million scholarships around the world to youth, virtual or in person, and teenagers, and showing them how to become young entrepreneurs.
Wow, man, that's that's an amazing story just in itself, just from that few minutes that you shared. Now, I know you shared about being incarcerated. Was there one thing that made you change your life, or was it a company of a bunch of scenarios that happened that finally a light bulb came on that you needed to change your life?
Well, I mean, martial arts was always there. I knew the difference between right and wrong. My parents taught me that. I was raised in the church. We know that, like my sponsor said, you had to go through recovery in order to get the message that was already instilled in you. So all those things were always implanted inside of me as I was coming up, the community. I'm not going to blame any of my decisions on no one because everybody gave me the right tools. I just was a knucklehead. I think most importantly, I was a people pleaser. I didn't have the courage to stand up and be myself. When I was in that jail cell, I had to stand up. Either I can make it work or I can come back home and be the same person. And I had a son. I didn't want my son to grow up and be like me. And as my sponsor that I met when I was incarcerated, he called me every name in the book. He said, any man that's in jail and got his kid outside and not taking care of him is less than a man. So don't even call yourself a man, you're a boy. He beat me down so bad that I wanted to hurt him, but I kept showing back up to the meeting. And in the meeting, always study from the 12 and 12 and the big book and the Bible. Man, it just turned that light on. It turned the light on and made me dig down inside and realize that if I make a commitment at this point in time in this jail cell, I don't have to die an active alcoholic. Or I would say I was more addicted to the lifestyle, the money, the girls, all that stuff. I can't blame it on alcohol because I was already messed up before I even put the drug and the drink in my system. So that awareness helped me so much to really learn to love me. And I love me today. I'm okay with me.
I work with a lot of guys that come out of jail or prison and they got a lot of good ideas, or some gravitate back to the old ways. Coming out of prison, how hard was it to readjust to life outside the bubble?
Well, when I was locked up, from the moment I made that prayer, every day I woke up, I did 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 kicks, 1,000 jumping jacks, 1,000 everything. I ran the prison yard. Anything that talked about God, I was in it. I was in the library every day. I was writing my business plan. I was writing my goals because I was already a world champion before I got locked up. I made 2 plans. I made a blueprint for what I would do if I go back to the hustling game. And I made a blueprint. Maybe if I try to do the things exactly like the people told me to do it before I went to jail, maybe it just might work. So rather than me doing it my way, I did it the way that I chose not to do that got my behind in jail. And guess what? When I came home from jail, my sister said I can come and live with her, like anyone. And I'm struggling, trying to find myself. I was like anybody. It's like when you go into jail, you're afraid how you're going to adjust to this. I'm claustrophobic. I was able to dive deep into meditation and learn how to live for the second because I couldn't live for a day. One day was too much for me. I had to cherish those seconds. I just stayed occupied and trying to become a better person and be free. You know what? I got a job in the kitchen. I learned how to be employable by working in the kitchen. And it's funny, I was afraid to go to jail, but when I got adjusted to my life, I had more peace in jail than I ever had in my life. And when they said, come home, I didn't want to come home. That sounds crazy. I did not want to come home. Everything that I needed was happening. But when they let me go, I was a little lost for a minute. And when I went to my sister, I think the thing that really turned it on was when I went to, oh man, whew. I went to stay with my sister. And when I went out the next day to try to find a job, a friend of mine was trying to help me get a job with the city. My sister's boyfriend, which is an issue I think happens with a lot of insecure men who can't handle seeing a young man grow up. I mean, that's another topic in itself. He went and he told my sister all these lies that I was still trying to get high. And all I wanted was somebody to help me. And when I came back, my sister said, you got to get out. You need to grow up and become a real man and get a real job. You can't stay here no more. It broke my heart. And I supposed to been going to see my son at that time too. And when my son called, I said, Marco, Daddy can't come and see you because I got to find a place to stay. And he said, Daddy, you can come and live with me. And ooh,
It's okay.
I went there and all I could give him was my Bible. And I told him that Daddy got to leave Baltimore. Daddy can't go back. Daddy can't stay here. Daddy got to leave. I'm going to walk to D.C. and I'll come back. And it broke his little heart. And my niece, who was always there, I called her and told her I was going to walk to, I was going to walk to D.C. And she said, no, Uncle Bam Bam, I'm going to give you $20 out my piggy bank so you can catch a bus to D.C. I got the $20. I got on the bus. When I got off that bus, I went to Georgetown. I got a job in Burger King. I checked into a mission. I ran a Washington Monument. At that point in time, I wasn't going to let nothing stop me. Nothing. I got custody of my son. I got my business back. I got my life back. And I became a responsible citizen in society today. And I have not used or sold drugs ever again. And every day I go back, even the guy that helped destroy Baltimore, the moment I got my strength, I went back to that same community that I sold drugs in, and I still go back and I teach them kids, and I talk to those kids, and I show everybody, if you make a commitment to become a better person for God, not nobody else, if he can do this for me, he can do it for you. And now, I mean, look at me. Who would ever think that I would be so blessed? I mean, my son, my daughter, my dojo. I mean, life is great, man. I mean, but I had to make that commitment. I knew that I wasn't spiritually fit to stay in Baltimore. I had to get away. And now I can go back and I give back. I mean, I say this last thing. How in the world would the mayor, Martin O'Malley, proclaim Baltimore on September the 29th, Bam's Day? You know what I'm saying? I mean, Senator Barbara Mikulski flew a flag over the White House in honor of all the stuff I do because my sponsor said I got to give it away. Hey, man, I ain't that intelligent. I just know that in order to keep this thing, I got to give it away. And hey, man, that's what I did when I came home. I could not go back to the revolving door. I had to stand up and be a man and take responsibility. And I would never want to go back to jail ever again.
So, Bam, I have to ask you this question. I've heard you say it a couple times, the struggle. You know when that struggle is coming on, and it still comes on, I'm sure, every once in a while. What do you do when you feel that coming on? What is your way of getting it in your head and getting it out, get that struggle together?
Well, for 35 years, every morning I wake up at 3 o'clock, I pray to God, I write to God, I look at my vision board, I read my 12 and 12, I read my big book, I read my daily reflections, I read the Bible, and I read any book that deals with a character defect that has came up from an encounter. I go out and get a book or something that I can read and study. See, it's about studying. It ain't just about reading. I study. And that's what I've been doing for 35 years. That's what my sponsor teach me. You know, so 3 o'clock in the morning, like I was in jail, before my family or anybody get up, I'm working on BAM. I think sometimes people don't really, I think we arrive at some point and we just go to meetings and we don't work. No, man, it's a 24/7 job. Every day you wake up, you got to work. And I try to become conscious of the disease before it comes up. You know, in martial arts, we can sense when, you know, we people call it paranoia, but it's your chi. You can sense when a negative vibration's coming. Well, you can sense when you become that aware of your internal strength, you can sense that you're about ready to get angry. So I say the Serenity Prayer 7 times. By the time you get to 5 times, that feeling then already arrested. Because it's, once again, feelings are not facts, but it is a fact that we have feelings. I got to play that picture all the way through. That's what I do.
I like it. I mean, I like it. I may have to look into that myself. Absolutely.
I tell you what, I'm here listening to your story, and you're getting choked up, and man, I'm holding back the tears a little bit myself just so I can get through the interview, because I'm so, I was, and I'm not making this about me, but I used to be an atheist a long time ago. I was on the fire department for a lot of years and seen a lot of death, so I kind of got hardened a little bit. What do you do if you got those kids or those adults that come to you? They've been hardened. The streets got to them. Life got to them. I relate to you. When I was young kid, I got molested myself too. I work with a lot of different guys in jails and that's been in prison and stuff. But I just want to know what your take when they come to you and you tell your story. I know that's a big thing to soften them up a little bit. But if they're hard-nosed, what's some of the things that you do with them?
I don't know. I've been fortunate to say that there's nobody that has rubbed me that way. One thing you learn, I think that we learn when you learn to flip what you did to hustle. Come on, I could sell anybody. I could sell you a bag of doo-doo when I was on the street. I could take whatever I had and I guarantee you'll buy it from me. So if I was that good with hustling, and even on the good side, I was able to get someone to help me open a karate school at 13 years old. So I had a skill set, which is a people skill. I had to learn how to use it for something good. So I can read people real well. If I sense that you are being a little standoffish, I'm like, all right, man, if that's what you want to do, let's do some push-ups or something, by the time you start trying to do 5 push-ups and I'm doing 35 or 100, by that time, that'll humble you up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's the one thing about physical motion. Physical motion, you know it. You can take a couple of bad guys and say, let's run a fire drill. And they could be the hardest guy on the street. You take them and run them through one of those fire drills with that outfit on. By the time they get a couple of feet, man, they're going to be on their knees. Can I stop there? Please, I can't handle it no more. And we know that's the power of mind, body, and spirit. Some people, you got to break them down with the physical. Some people just keep quiet. Sit there and let them speak first. And then some, you got to break them down with the mental to get into their mind and share your story. But I think it's about learning how to read people. When you want to help people, I teach kids as young as 3.5 years old. So imagine a 3-year-old coming in and he don't want to do nothing. You got to do a lot of things, man, to convince that little kid to hey, all right, Mr. Johnson, I'll try it, So I'll do a backflip or I'll just fall down on the floor and act like I'm just watching them and I can't move. And they start laughing. Once that humor comes in, man, then you got them. So I think if you want to work with people, you got to learn how to communicate with people. And that's an ongoing quest because nobody's the same.
Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
That's good. That's good right. Way to put it. I tell you, I was one of those stubborn guys, and one of the person helped me. He was a college dropout. He studied philosophy. The other was an old biker, and the other one was a factory worker. So it took 3 of them. They tag teamed me, and they broke. Thank God they broke my will. That old thing. I tried to be an atheist, but thank God I lost that battle.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But. I tell you, your story is amazing. Just hearing all the stuff, and I know there's a lot more to it. But it just amazes me from where you came from. And I sponsored a guy that was in prison, and I sponsored a lot of guys who were out of prison. The guy I sponsored in prison was more freer than the guys I sponsored outside of prison because he worked the 12 steps. He had a God of his understanding, and he knew those walls didn't find who he was. He was free in his mind, body, and in his heart too. So, man, that's... I can relate. Like when I went to the halfway house, I didn't have to be there, but I had to be there, if you know what I mean. I stayed there, and I didn't want to be there for a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden I got the grooving and got being around all these 27 different guys. And then at the end of it, I didn't want to leave there. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay right there because, man, I had discipline. I had sobriety. I started feeling good. And then to go outside of yourself and do something you hadn't done, it scared me. And I was a guy that was, been in fights, did the karate. I was into karate and did some things, not like your Bam. Just I dipped my foot into it enough to get enough to get in trouble. But I didn't want to admit I was afraid. I didn't want to admit that. But it took my sponsors and people like yourself to motivate me and just keep a positive assurance that everything's going to be okay as long as I take these certain steps.
I always cry. One of the things my sponsor told me that real men cry. So my tears are tears of joy. I get a chance to tell my story, and I get a chance to help other people. I think that, we're more alike than different. That's what the program teaches. So, I could be in the class and a little kid could do a movement and I'll just start crying. And I tell my boys, my boys, one of my sons, he went to see Avengers and Iron Man died. He cried, man. We all cried, that's okay. We were raised not to do that. We were raised to believe that real men don't cry. Real men do cry.
Yeah.
Real men express themselves. I'm not with all the modern masculinity and all that stuff. I believe it's a balance in what men have to do. But as long as we understand what our duty is, we can cry. And like the big book says, as God's children, we crawl before no one. When trouble comes, we demonstrate God omnipotence. That's what people don't like to talk about. We ain't gonna let nobody walk over us like carpet mats. What they say, Jesus was meek but not weak. We not weaklings here, so we can pull it out if we have to, but we choose not to because we understand the consequences of pulling that person back out again. I think most of us in the program, if we've been that low, we don't want to bring out that person, not that angry person. We're afraid. I know I'm afraid of them, so I don't want them to come out,
Bam, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'll be 60 years old in January.
Okay, cool. And how do you find these people that you want to, for lack of a better term, recruit?
Well, I travel all over the world. I don't talk about it that much, but I used to be on a TV show with Bruce Lee's daughter. All the goals I strive to be. I went to China, got certified in mainland China. I just finished a movie. My daughter's one of the top Black Hollywood females in Hollywood. My son was on TV. I was blessed to be able to be in the Black Belt Hall of Fame with Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris. I worked with Chuck Norris. I worked with Wesley Snipes, Michael Jai White. All those people. So, but I don't know. People just one of the things at the martial arts, I just did an interview with Black Belt Magazine yesterday, and they said I'm the light of the martial arts. I don't believe that, but that's what they say. I guess it's because when I came home, I knew about me being a natural, talented martial artist that had achieved so much. I know a lot of people was trying to count me out and was talking about me. So when I came home from jail, I took my story to people. I took the power from them and I told them my truth. Because I think one of the things that we all got to learn, either you tell your truth or you let somebody else tell your truth and they take control of your life. I was already weak, so I could not handle that emotion or disappointment or rejection that people would bring if they shared my story in a manner that made me feel less than. But when I came to you, I come to a magazine and they said, hey, we want to put you in the cover of the magazine. I said, yeah, hey, that's right. I was locked up, right? Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I heard that. Oh, yeah, man, I was locked up. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Plus, I'm in recovery, too. See, I got to say that because I can forget real easy. So if I let the whole world know my problems, I can't sneak off into a dark bar one night and order a Coors Light because I might see somebody say, hey, Bam, don't you have a problem with drinking? They're like, oh, man, damn, I can't even escape nowhere. Y'all everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I had to do that for me because I don't want to go back, man. For me to go back is to die. That's real talk. And I got to do whatever it takes,
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, just listening to him, I'm like, I can't wait to see his life story movie. When's the movie come out?
Well, there's a documentary. If you go on Tubi, there's a documentary called The Bam, the story of how I made it from Baltimore. That's a PG-13. I'm saving the higher rating one because it's pretty deep for another mission. I'm working with someone now, but we have a book that I wrote when I was in jail. And I have a couple of books out there too. But I think we're all alike, man. I just do martial arts. It's just my tool. I'm a recovering alcoholic. That's all it is. I ain't no more than that. That's all I be telling people. That's why I love going to meetings and I love this. I can just be me. Before I thought all that meant something. None of that stuff means anything. when I wake up in the morning, man, I got to read my big book, and I got to ask God, let your will be done. Because if we forget that and we go back out, the only way I got in the program was incarceration. It was a blessing for me at that time, but I say to anybody out there that think they tough, I would rather die before I go back to jail again.
Well, I tell you what, that brings me to ask you a question. There's somebody right now that's listening to this broadcast. Now, it could be a first responder. It could be somebody on the street. It could be anybody. They're lost, whether it's an addiction or whether it's life or whether they're thinking about killing themselves. You got 2 minutes to talk to them. What are you going to say to them?
Well, the first thing I would tell you, be honest with yourself. Drop down on your hands and knees. Be honest with you and God, and be open to the spiritual answers that come to you, and write them down. Have a pen and a piece of paper. Don't overanalyze what you're writing. Write it down. Let it go. And then just try to take 1 second at a time. Not one day, 1 second. And just keep on praying. When you feel weak, God grant me strength, accept the things I cannot change, courage change the things I can, and wisdom know the difference. Keep saying it until that emotion goes away. And I swear by God, the program works. You will then see your life change tremendously. We're not talking about external wealth. We're talking about internal truth. Love of yourself. That's the best advice I can give you, because that's what I still do to this day.
That's cool.
That's awesome advice.
And also, too, if anybody's out there, you're suffering, you're hurting, dial 988. That's the National Suicide Prevention line. You dial 988, jump on burntout.org and message us. We can get in contact with Bam, also with Jeff. And then worldwidepeersupport.org. There's a support meeting for first responders Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. But just remember, don't give up, give in. Bam, when I'm going through some stuff, there's some stuff that pops in my mind early on. I forget our anniversary sometime, me and my wife, so I forget my kid's birthday, but there's certain slogans, stuff that I read out of a book. I think one was Captain Admiral James Beard said, in a lifetime, so few times a man has serenity, but those few times sustain him for a lifetime. Do you have one of those statements, slogans, verses that keeps you going when you kind of feel like you're going down that rabbit hole?
Surrender to win. Every fighter got to come back to the corner and let the corner man wipe him down and allow him to catch his breath, and then tell him what he got to do to win. Surrender to win.
That's good, man. That's simple too. I can remember that, man. That's something I can remember. I tell you, I know a lot of people, you can't, we're just doing audio today, but a lot of people can't see Bam, but he says he's almost 60. He looks like a little kid. He is smiling and laughing. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
It's God, man. You know what happens when we come into the program and we live mind, body, and spirit. We eat right, but we stay happy. We make other people. You know the acronym for the BAM? The acronym for the BAM means the better attitude maker. Wherever I go, I got to make everybody better.
That's good.
I like it, yeah.
That's good. What's your website? Could you tell us your website again?
PointMMA.com, or you can go to the urbanspirit.org and become a part of a support for the 1 million scholarships, where we're trying to get 1 million scholarships virtually or in person in the hands of young kids or teenagers, so they can learn these principles without having to go through the hell that we went through, and using the tools of martial arts to, just become better people. Our kids are suffering right now, probably worse than any generation before them, because they got so much, sometimes too much education is not good for you, especially when you can't study. There's so much going around. They don't know what to pick and choose, and half of it is a waste of time because it's someone else's opinion, not a rooted opinion based upon facts and experience.
Well, man, I tell you what, this has been a good episode for me. I needed to hear you today. So the God of my understanding connected us together through a good friend, Raj, out there in Maryland too. So, well, Bam, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everybody that's listening today. Share this episode. This is a Cinderella story, man. And it's beautiful to see somebody come from that dark hole and build his life and help other people build their life. But, till then, everybody, go home, shut your phone off, shut your radio off, and get some sleep. Thank you.
Peace and blessings.
Thank you for listening to Burnout. Burnout is brought to you by the Worldwide Peer Support. You can visit Burnout Podcast at burntoutpodcast.org or visit Worldwide Peer Support at worldwidepeersupport.org. Your hosts for the Burnt Out podcast are Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy. Produced by Sean P. Neal. A MyPodcast.media production.